The value of these projects to our healthcare system cannot be underestimated.
President Buhari inaugurates healthcare projects in Maiduguri. He states commitment to the well-being of Nigerians.
Federal government describes CNN's reportage on Lekki shooting as unprofessional
CNN
and
relied
sensational.
heavily on unverified and possibly doctored videos, as well as information sourced from questionable sources.
National Road Safety takes front burner at National Economic Council.
Design regulations and standards which are deemed necessary to support activities in the National Road Safety Strategy.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the yellow fever outbreak in parts of the country.
All right, let's begin with a saying of one of the wisest kings ever recorded in history. That's, of course, King Solomon. He's considered to have said that there is nothing new under the sun. I'm sure we are all familiar with that saying. Now, that emphasizes the cyclic nature of human life here on Earth. But with the power of research, we are all able to gain deep insight into, of course, history, past events, and even the world of the unknown. And so, like Mike Wallace will say, all we are armed with for our discussion on today's program is research. And as I said earlier, that's because research has provided us with perspectives on so many issues, especially health conditions that have plagued us for decades.
Now, one of such health conditions, Claire, you're talking about is certainly yellow fever. And that's the immediate prompt for our discussion this morning, arising from the concern raised by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control of an outbreak of yellow fever in some parts of the country. And specifically, and that's to say earlier this month, the Center for Disease Control said it was notified by the health ministries of Delta and Enugu states of cases presenting with symptoms indicative of a viral hemorrhagic fever, which later tested positive for yellow fever.
All right, so yellow fever has been in existence for the past 200 years. Now, it was first reported in about 1648 in, of course, some islands in North America and, of course, Southern America. Now, in terms of prevalence, the World Health Organization reports a global rate of 200,000 infected people with an annual death rate of about 30,000. Now, the virus is also said to be endemic in 47 countries across Africa, 47 countries, including Africa and Latin America.
Well, narrowing the stats down home, Nigeria is considered a yellow fever high-risk country by international health institutions. And currently, the NCDC is responding to yellow fever outbreaks in 3 states of Delta, Enugu, and Bauchi. And indeed, within the first 10 days of this month, November 2020, there were no fewer than 76 deaths that had been recorded in the 3 states. So,
what or how much more do we know about yellow fever? Amazingly, quite a lot. Now, yellow fever is caused by the vector Aedes aegypti. Now, that's a species of mosquito that spreads viral infections, including yellow fever. The vector has also adapted to live in urban areas that's in close proximity to host humans, and so can be found indoors.
Now, like malaria-carrying mosquitoes, they breed in artificial containers, especially with stagnant water. And from research, if such mosquitoes are black or dark brown in color and bite during the day, it's likely to be the yellow fever-carrying vector, that's the Aedes aegypti. Under favorable environmental conditions, the adult lifespan of a yellow fever vector will range anything from 2 weeks to 1 month.
However, we are also aware that the vector can only fly relatively short distance. Its eggs can't withstand drying and is highly mobile, which means that it can be carried around the world attached to humans. Now, according to William Crawford Gorgas, now that's the man who eradicated the disease in, of course, Havana and Panama, Egypt is one of the feeblest, as I'm quoting him now, it's one of the feeblest species in its ability for flight, and it is also at once blown away and destroyed when it gets into a breeze. It therefore seldom wanders from the house in which it breeds.
So, yellow fever, of course, is a vaccine-preventable disease, and the vaccine was discovered in the 1950s. So, armed with all of this information, why has yellow fever remained, as it were, endemic? And why has it been so difficult to eradicate from our country, that's to say Nigeria, particularly also in the other 46 countries that are said to be endemic to yellow fever? That's the quest we have today in our conversation segment of Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the program.
Now, here's an interesting research finding about yellow fever vector, that's the Aedes aegypti. It has been discovered that, and this is quite interesting, that music can delay host attack, reduce blood feeding, and disrupts mating, thereby delaying the vector from biting the host. Kingsley, did you hear that?
Well, yes, I heard that. Quite interesting, but you can't put on music at all times. It's only for limited periods that you can listen to music. But it's quite interesting that music has the capacity of disrupting the activities of the vector-bearing mosquito.
Indeed. So our guest on today's program will give us more insight into, of course, this finding. In the meantime, I am Claire Dilabu Abdurazak. I join my colleague Kingsley to welcome you to the program. We are live on the network service of the NTA from our studios here in Abuja. In a moment, Chimobi Walter and Nigel will give us highlights of the morning news. Business news will follow, and much later, I will be here for a review of the papers. So let's get started with the news. Chimobi.
Hello, Kingsley and Claire. It's good to see you this morning. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. And we start on a political note as President Muhammadu Buhari has described the defection of Governor Dave Umahi of Ebonyi State into the APC as not only a good omen for the governing party, but indeed a stabilizing factor to the nation's political landscape. The president stated this while formally receiving the governor at his official residence Thursday evening.
I admired his courage. I told him it's an environment that has been thoroughly converted to PDP. For him to come out and join us now is a great thing for the party. The party has been very lucky to have him. And it's stabilizing the national politics, you know, for a governor from the southeast, you know, to come back and join APC at this stage. Already you, the press, are speculating that he wants to be president. What's wrong with that?
There is every reason for every person from Southeast to re-examine, you know, my purpose of leaving the PDP, and they know that the people of Southeast will have no place in PDP. If you come to my state, you will see quite a lot of developments. And these developments were not done with the FAC allocation. They were done by special intervention of Mr. President. I can boldly say that under Mr. President, I have developed Ebonyi State.
Away from politics now, several landmark projects executed at the University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital have been inaugurated towards enhancing healthcare delivery. President Muhammadu Buhari described the event as a reflection of federal government's commitment towards improving lives and livelihoods, as well as creating the enabling environment for growth, peace and progress. The projects were inaugurated virtually by the president.
The value of these projects to our healthcare system cannot be underestimated. Emerging diseases have made it necessary for all nations to increase and improve resource application, adapting to the new normal. I should direct the head of service and the budget office to look into the request of University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital for an increase in the personnel and overhead allocation so as to optimize services provided by the activation of these new projects. Nigeria is proud of your achievements.
In the meantime, the efforts of the First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic has received a boost from an international donor, Jack Ma, a co-founder of Ali Baba Group. The equipment arrived at Abuja through the headquarters of the Organization of the African First Ladies for Development in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
This one we are receiving the consignment. We are very happy on behalf of Her Excellency for this foundation, the Jack Foundation, to remember African First Lady and to send this consignment through the Organization of African First Lady for Development in their office in Addis Ababa.
And everybody knows the world and Africa especially, we are all going through the challenges of this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic. And we go a long way in saving lives and protecting our citizens.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has announced the 146 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The latest figure released brings the total number of confirmed cases to 65,839 infections in the country. A breakdown of the news cases from 11 states indicates that Lagos recorded the highest number for the day with 62 new cases, while FCT has 23. Others are Kaduna 21, Ogun and Rivers states have 12 each, while Ondo has 5 new cases. Oyo and Plateau states recorded 3 new cases each, while Bauchi and Kano state have 2 new cases each. The day's tally is completed by Kano State, recording 1 new case. Confirmed cases by state, Lagos has the highest with 22,766, followed by the FCT with 6,422, and Plateau comes third with 3,733 cases. With the latest developments, total number of active cases stands at 3,101, while 61,573 new cases have been successfully treated and discharged, and an unfortunate 1,165 patients have lost their lives. The National Road Safety Strategy 2021 to 2030 was this Thursday presented to the National Economic Council for consideration and endorsement as a national policy and strategy document for implementation by stakeholders. Minister of State, Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, while presenting the document, says this is in order to reduce road traffic crashes, including the development of road infrastructure across the country.
Implementation approach as specified in the strategic document took account of planning, coordination, execution, design, regulations and standards which are deemed necessary to support activities in the National Road Safety Strategy, how to create awareness amongst our people, research and training, the funding mechanism, and also the monitoring and evaluation mechanism.
The minister also speaks of the balance in the Federation accounts.
The current state of the excess crude account, which currently has a balance of $72,409,970.48. For the stabilization account, we currently have a balance of 48,019,297,160 naira 12 kobo. Whereas for the natural resources account, we have a balance of 155,530,778,234 naira 58 kobo.
In other stories now, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed is described as unprofessional and mere sensationalism. This reaction is part of the minister's briefing while commenting on a report aired on cable news network CNN, which prides itself as the world's news leader.
Then grouped in a preconceived stance that the soldiers who were deployed to Lekki toll gate indeed shot at protesters, killing some of them. CNN relied heavily on unverified and possibly doctored videos, as well as information sourced from questionable sources to reach its conclusion. This should earn CNN a serious sanction for irresponsible reporting. In its jaundiced reporting, CNN was blind to the fact that 6 soldiers and 37 policemen were killed in unprovoked attacks. Obviously, CNN did not consider the security agents human enough. CNN, in its investigation, was blind to the wanton destruction of property in Lagos and across the country.
That's the morning news. The program continues with Kingsley and Claire after the break. Stay with us.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Coming up next is business news with Ronami Egirani.
The latest CBN Purchasing Managers Index report, PMI, revealed that the nation's manufacturing PMI remained fixed at 50.2 index points this month. Experts confirm that this is a sign of recovery in the manufacturing sector, which has been contracting since May of this year. Some of the subsectors that have experienced expansions in the month of November include transportation equipment, furniture and related products, cement, textile, leather, plastic and rubber products, to name a few. 6 subsectors, however, contracted this month, and they include petrol and coal products, chemical and pharmaceutical products, as well as fabricated metal products. Now for a quick review of how the stock market performed yesterday, Thursday, the 19th of November, 2020. The markets experienced a small dip of 0.5% on Thursday, closing with an all-share index of 34,643.65 index points. Market capitalization was relatively steady at 18.1 trillion naira. The slight dip in the market was influenced by stocks like Presco with a 9.97% decline, Dangote Sugar with a 4.72% decline, and Stanbic with a 4.12% decline. With business news, I'm Ronami Egirani.
And that was the business news. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Coming up next is newspaper review with Bayo Atoyobi. Don't go away.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyobi, is here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning, Bayo.
Good morning. It's Friday. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so we have a Daily Trust newspaper.
Just one newspaper, and there is a reason for that. You'll see the reason in the headline that it's also on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper.
Okay, so let's get on with it. Now, the main story, FG-CNN trade words over Lekki shootings, and comes with a number of writers, purveyors of fake news, deceive the world. That's coming from the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says we'll certainly regulate social media. We stand by our story, CNN, and proposed regulation horrendous, lawyer. And the picture story, of course, that is the commander of 81 Military Intelligence Brigade on Victoria Island, Lagos, Brigadier General Ahmed Taiwo, during the Army's defense at the venue of the probe into the alleged shooting of End Stars protesters by soldiers on the 9th of October 20 at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos. Okay, now let's move away from that. EFCC invites Power Ministry officials over alleged 4.6 billion naira illegal payments. Details of that story you can find on page 24. Stories trending at the foot of the paper. APC, Buni receives Umahi, Deputy Governor, and orders, page 42. We found crude oil in commercial quantity in Benue Tro, that's Kiari, page 20. But Biamila security aid shoots newspaper vendor, that's on page 4. Just a little again below the nameplate. Northern Governors inaugurate committee on role of traditional rulers on page 7. Emir of Zauzau, Kaduna government queries 4 kingmakers. That's on page 41. 2023 elections can't hold under present constitution. And that's coming from Southern leaders on page 42. So that's the outlook of the Daily Trust newspaper, the only paper standing.
Yes, and the reason, of course, is from that headline you read right at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust.
Okay.
There was an incident yesterday around the Federal Secretariat, which is right in the center of Abuja itself. That a policeman in the convoy of the Speaker of the House of Reps allegedly shot at a newspaper vendor. Report in the paper says that the vendor was shot in the head. Circumstances are also described in the story itself. Indeed. And of course, this morning, our production crew have not received any papers because the vendors are said not to be available.
Okay, Kingsley, since you're with it, let me just read out a part of what the paper says.
Yes.
It says, the incident happened at about 3 p.m., as Kingsley said, at the Federal Secretariat. And then the chairman of the Abuja chapter of the Newspaper Distributors Association of Nigeria, Benjamin Ibute, his narration to Daily Trust says the vendors sell their papers okay, that the rep members and senators, that is their route, and the traffic lights used to stop them for about 2 minutes. So while they were hailing them, they used to pack some money and give them, you know. It has been the tradition, so I don't know.
There's a point there. There's a point in the story somewhere that when the incident happened, the speaker inquired what it was. And he was told that there was nothing, you know, that transpired, and they moved on. So I think there must have been some misunderstanding, but the vendors are protesting. That's why we don't have other papers this morning. So, Bayo, let's...
meanwhile, this story there relates to the position of the federal government, that there was no massacre when soldiers dispersed NSAS protesters at the Lekki toll gate on October 20th. The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, says the testimony of Brigadier General Ahmed Ibrahim Tau to the judicial panel in Lagos indicate that soldiers fired blank ammunition into the air. He says, but sadly, purveyors of fake news deceived the world by proclaiming a massacre without showing any bodies. The minister also faulted CNN's reports as a disservice to itself and journalism. CNN should use its own internal mechanism to sanction those who relied on the same video that has been circulating on the social media in the so-called exclusive investigation. Sadly, the report was blind to wanton destruction across Lagos, burning of police stations, and even the killing of policemen. Although social media played a very prominent and negative role in the violence and misinformation, government will not shut down social media. He, however, indicated that social media will be regulated. Well, CNN based its information on what he said credible sources, and apparently one of the sources alluded to is a DJ, a disc jockey. Now, in journalism, your source becomes very, very germane to the validity and credibility of your information. If you begin to take sources and not verify them, particularly that the visuals that were used unconventionally, when a news medium uses a visual that it didn't originate, you will indicate on air that this material is from other sources but has not been verified. There were no such indications. So it was reported as if it was a CNN investigation. If you do that, you'll be embarking on another DJ. That is dangerous journalism. Certainly. Sometimes the American journalism has a complete detour from what we experience here in Nigeria, particularly that we have our orientation from the British system. You can even notice from even the American presidential campaign, you see that CNN is apparently pro a candidate, Fox News is apparently pro a candidate. The media is supposed to be far from the madding crowd, surveillance of the environment, bring out all the information there and leave your viewers or your readers to judge. But when the media takes a position, it becomes very, very difficult for members of the public to make a discerning from what you are reporting.
You know, the narration of a BBC reporter, which is also trending on the social media, who said she was present at the scene, you know, was that she observed, because the question to her from the presenter was, did you see with your eyes, you know, bodies of people shot? And her narration was that she saw, you know, people shooting in the air, and that the only person she said she saw was a young man who was gasping for breath, but not from, you know, she didn't say either from bullet wounds or whatever, but she said apparently from exhaustion or fright of the sporadic shootings that she said she heard, you know. So it somehow conflicts with what, you know, Eligba reported. That's the CNN correspondent.
Correspondent from London.
Well, Bayo, there's another story on the front page of the Daily Trust which we read, and the story has been on for many years, just below the nameplate of the Daily Trust newspaper, and it has to do with traditional rulers. So if we can just focus on it on the screen there.
Okay. It says, here it is, Kinsley.
That's right.
Yes.
All right. The story is headlined, Northern Governors Inaugurate Committee on Role of Traditional Rulers. That's page 7. As I said, the story has been trending for many years now. Usually, the campaign is to have a constitutional role for traditional rulers. I'm going to make the following observations with the greatest respect to our traditional institutions and our traditional rulers. Somehow, we have to deeply evaluate this demand or this request, and to see whether if you have it constitutionally enshrined, it will further the role of traditional rulers or otherwise. In the First Republic, yes, we had a House of Chiefs, which was part of the governance structure that we had. The question to ask primarily would be, why is it that in the 1979 Constitution, we decided to eliminate the House of Chiefs? There were good grounds for, it's discontinuing with the House of Chiefs, or the role, specific constitutional role of traditional rulers. The 1999 Constitution borrows heavily from the 1979 Constitution, as lawyers will say, virtually on all fours with the 1979 Constitution. So what specific role, therefore, would you want traditional rulers to play constitutionally? Some persons would also argue, oh, yes, they are the closest to the people, they are the custodians of culture. Again, as I said, I'm making all of these observations with tremendous respect to our traditional institutions. I wouldn't know whether it subsists, but it used to be the case that traditional institutions and local governments have linkages. In other words, traditional institutions draw some allowances from local governments. So if your jurisdiction covers a number of local governments, you get entitled to certain percentages. What is that meant for? Part of what is meant for is the functioning of your traditional institution. What is the function of a traditional institution? To also ensure that there is peace in your domain, to ensure that there is security in your domain, to ensure that your people have their well-being, and that you can provide these linkages with the local government authorities. In the past, such as during the colonial era, the traditional institutions provided intelligence right up to the DO, who was the district officer, because you and I, we live in our communities. If you see a stranger in your community, you would know. So you report to your district head, or you report to whoever your baale was, and your baale would then escalate it. So what do we find these days? Do you need a constitutional role to be able to play that first primary level of intelligence gathering, for instance? That's one. Second point, Bayo, before you also respond to this. We have seen the level of challenges that the country is facing on security fronts, and sometimes how disruptive these security challenges have been, either in terms of riots, kidnapping, banditry, and so on and so forth. And we have to ask ourselves, our traditional rulers preside over whatever remains of what used to be empires in those days. history teaches us about the rise and fall of empires. And you will find that in those days, some of what is happening now were some of the constitutive factors of the fall of empires. If the administrative structures of the rulership did not respond to emerging challenges, yes, of course, they were fully in control and fully in charge, but some of these things cannot be happening in the domains, and yet, the clamor is for constitutional role. Even if you had a constitutional role, what difference would it make?
Well, I think the fallout from this came from the meeting of the Northern Governors Forum with the traditional rulers, for which two committees were set up. One of them is headed by His Royal Highness, the Emir of Zaria, who is heading the committee that will to fashion a rule for traditional rulers in the future of what we have foreseen. But going back to 1979 and 1999, the essence of excluding any political role for traditional rulers constitutionally was to ensure that they are protected from the political exigencies of the First Republic. So it is a dilemma, but these days, like they say, they have become like fire brigade. It is only when there is crisis that we now call them as our traditional fathers to come and help put off the fire. And the argument now is that if you give them a critical and direct role, apart from what you have described there, then they will be able to impact on some of these issues before they blow out into crisis.
Yeah, the club, by the way, is countrywide. It's not restricted to a part of the country.
Yes, it is.
Claire.
The other good story is that former President Goodluck Jonathan is 63 today. President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated him.
We've used that time. Just quickly, quickly.
Well, I was going to say that the president has wished him good health and long life, and he says that he appreciated the fact that he has dedicated his working for ECOWAS envoy, and that his role has brought a lot of wisdom and also honor to Nigeria. And he wishes him well in good health and as he continues to live for the benefit of our great nation.
Okay, thank you, Bayo. Thank you. And we also wish him good health, more good health, and of course, more contributions, positive contributions to the country. Thank you, Bayo. So do have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday, by the grace of God. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, so don't go away. In a short while, we'll begin our conversation.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, and we are still live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, to kickstart our conversation, which is on the latest yellow fever outbreak in parts of the country, let's listen into this background by our correspondent, Oyoyemi Ajayi.
The resurgence of yellow fever in recent times in Nigeria has become a source of concern not just to government alone, but everyone who don't know who the next victim might be, and efforts are on to ensure that the disease is contained. Throughout 2019, 47 deaths were reported in Nigeria. Moving forward to this year, health authorities say that more than 70 people have died of yellow fever in Nigeria since September, with the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, revealing that there had been a sudden spike in cases and deaths in some communities, especially in Enugu, Delta, and Bauchi states. Taking the bull by the horn, a multi-agency yellow fever technical working group coordinated by NCDC was set up on 7th of November with the name the National Yellow Fever Emergency Operations Center to coordinate prevention, preparedness, and response activities across all affected states. With the support of the World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance will safely relaunch an accelerated series of mass preventive vaccination campaigns to protect Nigerians against yellow fever. The accelerated yellow fever campaigns phase 4 will target more than 30 million people in 7 states: Bauchi, Benue, Borno, Delta, Osun, Ondo, and Oyo states, and complete the pending 2019 Phase 3 yellow fever campaign in Anambra State. This will be followed by further yellow fever vaccination efforts between 2021 and 2022, which will target more than 95 million persons as part of the push to eliminate yellow fever epidemics. The yellow fever vaccine is said to be highly effective and provides lifelong protection, as it has a long history of safety and effectiveness. Since 2016, more than 54 million Nigerians have been protected against yellow fever through mass vaccination and reactive campaigns. Now, are there plans that these mass vaccines will be given in other states? And what measures is the government taking in ensuring that yellow fever is not only contained but eradicated in Nigeria? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are already seated to provide answers shortly.
All right, many thanks to Oyemi Ajayi for that background. Now, before we introduce our guests to begin discussing the issue of yellow fever outbreak, now just to indicate that we have received some communication just now from the Commissioner of Police of the Federal Capital Territory, CP Bala Chiroma. While we were reviewing the newspaper, we did say that vendors in Abuja were protesting because one of their members was shot yesterday at the Federal Secretariat. Now, the story on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper, that's the caption to the photograph of the paper, indicates that the vendor was allegedly shot by a policeman, but the body of the story, of course, doesn't mention that specifically. Bala Chiroma, who is the CP of the FCT, says that it was not a policeman that shot the vendor yesterday at the Federal Secretariat. Just to clarify one more time, FCT indicating that the vendor who was shot at the Federal Secretariat in the heart of Abuja yesterday, the incident was not under the hands of a police officer. But if anything, it was a DPO who assisted in taking the injured vendor to the hospital.
Precisely, and that was also stated in the paper. So now that's settled, let's get set for our conversation, and we're looking at the outbreak of yellow fever here in Nigeria. Let me welcome our guests. They're all seated here in the studio. First, Dr. Basi Okbusen is Director, Disease Control and Immunization of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, NPHCDA. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians.
Good to have you. And we also have a lady here, Dr. Ronke Akonde. She's Head, Communicable Diseases, FCT Primary Healthcare Board, PHCP. Dr. Akonde, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right. Also with us here in the studios is Dr. Abubakar Jafia, Incident Manager of National Yellow Fever Emergency Operations Center, led by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Dr. Jafia, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
And from our Bauchi studio, we've been joined by Dr. Riwanu Mohammed, who is Chairman of the Bauchi State Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Dr. Riwanu, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right. I'm sure we'll clear up that audio connection from Bauchi. Claire?
Indeed. Okay. So let's start with Dr. Riwanu Mohammed. That's the Chairman, Bauchi State Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Dr. Mohammed, if you can hear us, we'll like for you, earlier in our conversation, we did mention Bauchi as one of the states where some strange diseases, that was how it was earlier described, was reported, but later on, I think the NCDC confirmed it to be yellow fever. Give us an idea, give us an insight. What is the present situation? Has it been isolated, or is there still cause for alarm?
Usually, about 2 weeks ago, our state disease surveillance officer of Ganjua local government of Bauchi State reported the death of about 8 persons from 2 wards, Mia Ward and Ganjua Ward. And then we sworn into action to carry out investigation. Our surveillance officers our surveillance were activated, and then we moved in to Ganjua to now go in to see if we can get any suspected case, and we took sample of our 8. And our suspect at that time, we were thinking of Lassa Fever and yellow fever because 2 of them were showing signs and symptoms of yellow fever. We went in actually to took their samples, and we sent to National Center for Disease Reference Laboratory in Abuja. The result came out to be 8 confirmed positive for yellow fever. That was the beginning of our problem. And in this case,
was 3-year-old lady baby, and it is really a problem. Then a rapid response team were activated in the Ministry of Health by the Commissioner of Health of Bauchi State, and a number of pillars was activated: case management, risk communication, and then surveillance and active detailed search of what was going on in the community. We went in with our partners, WHO and others. We found out that 2 wards were actually the case, because they are migrant farmers in those wards that went into the bush to carry out their farming season. They stayed 6 months in the bush. And then this was what they were doing since the time immemorial. And when they came back, we found out they were having signs and symptoms of yellow fever. And some sample was taken and they were positive. The next thing that we did was to go into the community to sensitize the leadership and the community about what is yellow fever. And this is a mosquito that bites mainly in the afternoon and evening. And so it's very difficult to contain it. Then we went in again to carry out reactive vaccination. As of today, we vaccinated over 800 people in this community. And when we went in again in the second or third time, we found out that there are signs and symptoms of the disease as extended to another ward, which is about Mercy. We took samples of about 60 individuals and a suspect, and then up to today, almost 12 days today, we have not received the result from the National Center for Disease Control laboratory in Abuja, because our molecular laboratory in Bauchi cannot carry out this test. Even not if it is COVID-19, we'll be able to carry it out. Then we keep on asking, because by the time we are not getting the test, we won't be able to contain it. Then we reactivated the risk communication committee, where they went in to synthesize the committee, the radio program. They have a local community radio, which we reactivated and even supported them to carry out informing the public about yellow fever and about the vaccination. Our surprise is that when we went in to carry out detailed investigation, we found out that 50% of the children in those communities are not vaccinated, because the mothers and the fathers forget about the last part of the vaccination at 9 months, but it's measles and yellow fever. And that was exactly what happened in the last year's outbreak in Al-Qaleri local government, where we found out that almost 50% are not vaccinated, because our mothers and fathers forget about the last part of vaccination at 9 months. And that is also another risk. Over 10 years, the National Primary Care Development Agency have started vaccination on yellow fever and measles at 9 months. But what happened is that because of our fathers and mothers are not actually complying with that, we can get any outbreak. And then what we realize also is that this disease is a viral infection, and those people are infected in the farm and also or in the bush with these mosquitoes, or they are also bitten inside the town. So the transmission is from person to person. The only person that can get this infection is a person that is bitten by the black mosquito, and mostly this mosquito is bitten in the afternoon or evening. So it's quite different from the malaria, the Anopheles mosquito that we know. And so we also activate what we call the entomology aspect of the control. In the ICG report that we need to get the type of mosquito we are dealing with. We know it is Aedes mosquito, what the variety. So we now engage a university professor who went in actually for the past 7 days. Is there with the gadget to catch the mosquito and larval collection and eggs to actually estimate and tell us that this is the type of the mosquito we are dealing with.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's come back to our Abuja studios, where we also have 3 medical personnel. Lady and gentlemen, let's our viewers have a better understanding of what yellow fever is all about. Well, what causes it? How is it contracted? What are the symptoms? So let's begin with Dr. Abubakar Jefia, who is the incident manager of the National Yellow Fever Emergency Operations.
Thank you so much. Yellow fever is a viral disease that is mainly transmitted by bites from a mosquito of the Aedes species. It is a completely vaccine-preventable disease. Once somebody is not protected and is bitten by Aedes mosquito, he stands the chance of getting yellow fever. As for the signs and symptoms of yellow fever presents initially with fever, with body pains, fatigue, diarrhea, abdominal pain, vomiting, sometimes with blood, sometimes without blood, and of course, towards the last stages, you tend to see yellowness of the eyes. That is where the disease actually got its name. And also, you get to see bleedings from the orifices. So these are some of the signs of yellow fever, just like other viral hemorrhagic, fevers.
Tell us, because the prompt for our conversation this morning is the fact that it has been reported. Research says 3 states. We don't know. So maybe you need to tell us what is the spread right now? What is the situation right now? How many states are down with these, included in this outbreak? And
yeah, so
yes.
Just to quickly mention, on the 1st and 2nd of November, we received reports from the state epidemiology teams of Delta and Enugu about cases of unknown illness. Also, on the 8th and 9th, we received similar reports from Bauchi and the Benue states. Now, immediately we received these reports, we deployed our national rapid response teams to Delta and Enugu states with clear terms of reference for them to go and understand, really investigate what is the cause of this unknown illness. Now, when they went there, working with the state teams, they took samples, they did outbreak investigation, and the outcome of the results we are all aware today. From the National Reference Laboratory, it was confirmed to be yellow fever. So far, we have 7 LGAs within 5 states that are currently having this outbreak. And also, we've had almost about 400 suspected cases, but of these 400 suspected cases, 39 cases have been confirmed. And in these confirmed cases, we have 6 deaths, meaning that the case fatality is about 15%. On the 7th as well, the NCDC activated the National Yellow Fever Emergency Operations Center, which is a hub, a multi-sectorial, multidisciplinary coordination center with all the pillars in place so that you have a common approach to the response, you have a common plan, you use the same resources to respond to the outbreak across all the affected states. So we've been working with the states to ensure that we curtail this outbreak at the birth.
Dr. Mohammed mentioned something about migrant farmers, the man that spent some months in the farm and then came back with this with the disease. Can you give us an insight into the epidemiological transmission cycle of it? Give us an understanding of how it is,
Yeah,
how
so
it's spread, yes.
yellow fever presents, and the epidemiology of yellow fever is in 3 different phases, mainly 2 really. The first is the sylvatic or jungle type. In this situation, the virus circulates within non-human primates in the bushes, and once a mosquito species that will be able to transmit yellow fever gets that virus from the non-human primates, and then for some reason a human being comes across to that mosquito, he gets bitten. The other type is urban yellow fever, urban type, and in this case we have if somebody that is infected goes into a highly densely populated environment where population immunity is low, then certainly with the presence of these mosquitoes, they can be able to transmit the disease. But what we are having in Africa is actually the intermediate type. That is the savanna type of cycle, where you have people within close to the bushes getting infected, and then they transmit to other people when we have the Aedes species available in that community or in that environment.
I just, before we bring in the other 2 guests, I want you to clarify the numbers, because there had been reports in the media of tens of deaths arising from this so-called strange disease, which has now been narrowed down to yellow fever. At some point, the Kogi state government had to issue a rebuttal that the deaths that were attributed to it, some 50 or so deaths, were actually from a neighboring state and not from the state itself. Others indicated that 10s had died in some of the states that you have also mentioned, Enugu and Delta, but you're here saying 6. So what do we know at this time about the number of persons who have died from this outbreak?
Yeah, so we have suspected cases of yellow fever, like I said, in about 5 states now. Of these suspected cases, we have over 70 deaths. These are suspected cases, people that died and they met the case definition of, what looked like yellow fever. However, for us to really say these people died of yellow fever, they have to have been confirmed to get suffering from yellow fever in the laboratory. And for that, we have only 6 people that died within the confirmed cases. The confirmed cases as of today are 39, and we had 6 deaths out of the 39 people that were confirmed to have yellow fever.
Well, how do you clarify this? I mean, you say suspected cases, confirmed cases, and then fatalities. Well, I'm sure we'll get back to you so that you clarify the number. But from what you are saying, there are probably some 70 persons or so who are suspected to have died of yellow fever. I still want to come back to the issue of the symptoms. Dr. Basi Oposen, tell us some more about the symptoms, because from what Dr. Jafia was saying, there will appear to be a mimicry of some of the symptoms of malaria. So how might a person have a strong index of suspicion that this isn't malaria that I'm dealing with, it's not even typhoid fever?
Okay, thank you. Like you said, all the viral infections, which includes the yellow fever, the Lassa, and the rest, will come with signs that are very close to that of malaria. And it's easy for one to misdiagnose and say, oh, this is malaria. And that is what happened to some people. But in yellow fever, typically, you will now have a situation where the person, in addition to all those other signs, will have severe pains, especially like the back pains. And with all those conditions now, after about a period of about 1 week or so, we now have, because most of the cases will come mild, while 1 in every 7 will now tend to become severe. Now, out of that, those that come down with the sickness, after about a period of 1 week of those signs and symptoms, you discover that the person will tend to be as if the person is getting well. A day, 2 days after, for those 1 out of the 7 we are talking about, they will now come back into the real cases, the severe stages of the yellow fever disease. Then at that stage, the key things you see at that stage will be very high fever. It's not just like the normal fever that we'll see, very high fever. Then the yellowness of the skin, which we call the jaundice, which is what characterizes yellow fever from other diseases. And then bleedings from the orifices from the body, like the mouth, the nose, the anus. And then the last stage of it is the organ failures, where the organs shut down. And 30 to 60% of this 1 in 7 persons who come down with the disease actually died. That is the statistics of those that died. And I remember you've mentioned, asked earlier, how many people have actually died from this so far. The reports we've had from Delta State, when they wrote officially 2 weeks ago, was that they lost 30 persons. From Enugu, they lost 47 from the report sent in from the commissioner, and from Bauchi, 8. And all these deaths and cases that we reported were between the ages of 18 years and 30 years, the highest in all these states. And also, and following up, like my colleague from the HCDC said, the case in Delta that was the first to be reported, 9 of these cases were taken to the lab at the Rural Specialist Hospital. 6 of them were tested, and then 3 out of the 6 that were tested came down positive for yellow fever. It's unfortunate those that died before the report was made. It will not be possible at this stage to confirm whether they died of it or not, but it's likely because they are from the same community. Like the Delta was from the Ika Northeast local government, and all the cases came from there. In Enugu, it came first from Igweze North local government, the area bordering Kogi State. And then as we are talking now, a week after, it has extended to Nsukka local government and Izi Uzo local government. So we have 3 local governments in Enugu that is circulating. And then in Bauchi is the Ganjua local government. And the interesting aspect of it is, and to further confirm to us, is likely this was yellow fever we are dealing with. There have been quick response. Immediately, the executive director, NPHCD, got the report. He called the team into action, and working with all our partners, there was immediate response in terms of vaccination. And we have seen that there are no more new cases coming from this area, and the vaccination is actively going on in those places as we are talking about. Another thing is that, we had planned as a country, knowing that this will happen, to vaccinate Nigerians, because once we are vaccinated, we are prevented against it. But because of the COVID, the campaign was shifted from June to July. And as we're talking, the campaigns were already now, because of the COVID, with the response, the trainings to the health workers on how to conduct the campaign in the context of COVID, it was shifted to November. So in Delta, once those cases were reported, what the agency did with the leadership of the executive director and the minister was to respond straight to the LGA that was concerned, while the training for the other local governments has been concluded, and the campaign in all those rest LGAs in those states will start on the 28th of November to protect most citizens from those local governments.
Okay, Kingsley, let me bring Dr. Akonde, who is is head of communicable diseases in the FCT. I'm wondering, Dr. Jafia talked about the cycles, and I'm particularly interested in this jungle breed, which is why is there usually a large outbreak of yellow fever?
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful question. Large outbreak of yellow fever usually occur whenever someone who is infected with the virus enters into a population with low or no immunity, like my colleague have rightly said. So this happens when people don't participate in routine immunization, particularly at the age of 9 months for infants. So, or due to vaccine failure, this can also be a factor responsible for the large outbreak. Another factor is the high density of mosquitoes, particularly the Aedes aegypti that we are talking about. This high density of mosquito, it's a big risk for people in the tropical Africa, particularly in Nigeria, and some central and in some parts of Central America and South America. So these mosquitoes are the vectors that carry the parasite from an infected person to someone who is not, immune at all, or someone with low immunity. So that is why it is important. We still emphasize on vaccination. It is the most important method of preventing these diseases.
It is a non-communicable vaccine preventable disease, isn't it?
It is communicable.
It is communicable. But I'm wondering, just like mosquito, malaria, they are all spread by mosquito. Mosquito is a common vector here and all that. So why are people not also coming down, with malaria, just as people come down with yellow fever? That's actually my question.
People are actually coming down with malaria.
But it's not so endemic. That's what I'm saying.
It is endemic with us. People are dying. We lose almost hundreds of thousands of children and pregnant women to malaria. It's just that maybe we don't publicize it the way we should, the way we ought to. And it's not, it doesn't cause epidemic like yellow fever, but it is endemic. It's year in, year out, we have it with us. People die daily due to malaria. So it's not correct to say people are not dying of malaria.
I didn't say people are not dying. I'm just saying the large outbreak.
Yes, we get to, from time to time on Good Morning Nigeria, focus on some of these public health issues. Some of the hemorrhagic fevers that we have dealt with on Good Morning Nigeria will include Ebola. And then we'll also include Lassa fever. We know that the vector for Lassa fever is the rat. They say the one with multiple mammary glands. Ebola is said to be moving from simians to humans. And now, yellow fever is said to be mosquito-borne. I just want us to get this cleared up for our viewers. Now, a mosquito, that's a female Anopheles mosquito, carries the Plasmodium parasite that causes malaria. If I have malaria, the malaria is not communicable to my next person to be, or is it?
It is.
Well, I just, no, hang on a second. The fact that I have malaria, hang on a second, unless, of course, a mosquito bites me and then bites another person. But malaria is not a hemorrhagic fever, or is it? So, how come that a mosquito, a different species of mosquito, can now cause this hemorrhagic fever, which is yellow fever, and by the way, within what space of time between infection and then the escalation to the severe stage and fatality? Dr. Bassi.
Thank you, Kingsley.
All right. All right, let's look at it this way. Like you asked earlier, now discussing with Nigerians, there are 3 cycles of this transmission. I'll link it to how it's linked with the mosquito. The jungle cycles, the savanna, the jungle that is from the bush, where the primates that have the virus in them, typically the viruses are in the blood of those primates in the bush. Now, we have the second cycle that is the savanna, those that are living around the borders with those bushes. We have the hunters, the farmers who now go into these forests, which is the typical case we saw happening in Bauchi. They will now be inside that bush, there are mosquitoes. Those mosquitoes feed on those primates inside the bush. Once there is an infected primate there and the mosquito feeds on it, it picks the virus. When it bites on the man that visited the place, the hunter, it transfers it into the hunter. The particular mosquito that is responsible for that is called the Aedes aegypti. It will pick that virus from the primate, swallow it, come back, bite another human being now, transfer it into the human being. That human being that he has transferred to will now have the virus. It will now develop into the stage of having mild symptoms or nothing at all, because there are most people that have received the vaccine and so on might receive the bite, but the virus has no effect on them. There are a few, like I said, will now show those mild symptoms, and then 1 out of every 7 will now show the severe symptoms. Now, this person living around the savannah, somebody from the urban will go and visit those border areas, maybe for work, for visit or anything. It gets bitten by the mosquito around that area. It will now bring that virus in his system that was transferred by the mosquito back to this city. That is the one we now call the urban cycle. If this person has the virus inside his blood, the mosquito in the city goes and bites another person in the city. That is when we now have the urban circulation. And we see that mostly when it is starting, these outbreaks are starting, it's usually around those communities near the jungles where the people visit the forest. Like Ebola. This is what happened in yellow fever. But once somebody is immunized, the person has immunity, because most people that receive the yellow fever vaccination have lifelong immunity. It doesn't have any effect on them. It will just come, show trace as if mild fever, and it will disappear without anything happening. And that's why I usually encourage Nigerians to ensure that, especially for now we have in the country routine immunization for children at 9 months. We encourage our caregivers to ensure that all their children 9 months once they get to 9 months, those children should be immunized. And then in other states, like we have 7 states for campaign this November, all the other adults, children 9 months to adult 44 years in all these states are the targets for this campaign. So we encourage all Nigerians living in these 7 states to ensure that during this campaign, as we are starting, some are starting on the 28th, some 23rd, and some on the 28th from these 7 states, to ensure that they go out, receive the vaccination. Is free of charge, and it gives a lifelong immunity.
Why the upper limit of 44 years?
Because that's the age group commonly that goes out to the forest, the age group commonly that we are seeing coming down with the vaccination and with the illness. And those other elder age group, remember in those early days, once you go, they'll give the shot. And our adults, the elderly people now, we're very committed to receiving their vaccination. So most of the people we are seeing now at the old age are those who have received before and who don't have need to receive the vaccine
Dr.
again.
Bassi,
and they are
thanks a lot. But the aspect of the question that Claire and I were curious about still hasn't been answered.
Precisely.
Maybe Dr. Jafia, you may wish to explain. This is just, I mean, the key trajectory that you were discussing on yellow fever is clear, or is getting clearer. But why is it that a species of mosquito would carry a viral infection, and in the meantime, another species of mosquito would carry malaria parasites, and malaria is not a viral infection, which is why I was saying, if I have malaria and somebody comes into contact with my fluids, does the person automatically have malaria? But for hemorrhagic fever, you are told to avoid the fluids and so on and so forth of that individual. Dr. Jafia, can you clarify this?
Just to quickly mention that even for the viral, hemorrhagic fevers, for example, yellow fever, you don't get yellow fever when you come into contact with somebody that has yellow fever. There has to be that vector that is, there in between the susceptible person and the person that, carries the infection. In malaria as well, malaria is also a protozoan disease that is being transmitted by, mosquitoes. These parasites, they have, there's a way that they have affinity for certain kind of vectors and not really for others. So the Anopheles mosquito lives with us within the, within our populations, and they are able to transmit malaria. However, the Aedes aegypti lives in the bushes, and they are completely different from the Anopheles mosquito. So probably that is what I can add to that. But also, just quickly to mention that for all these diseases, we all have a responsibility to ensure that we stop the cycles of transmission. This can be done through ensuring we keep our environments very clean, we avoid, having stagnant waters around, and we also use, insecticide, treated mosquito nets. Also, when people feel sick, they should, visit the health facilities so that they can get, the needed attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's return to Bauchi. Dr. Mohammed, and I'm glad, of course, that you're a medical doctor. So I'm going to ask you this question. Research findings, tell us that Aedes aegypti, that's the vector carrying yellow fever, was one of the first to be isolated. And so it was easy to find a vaccine for it. And that was why it was also easy for some people to eliminate it, in areas like Havana and Panama. And we have been carrying out vaccination, programs in conjunction with WHO and Gavi for a long time. So why has it persisted? Why has it been difficult to, get rid of yellow fever? And why is there a large gap, in those that have been vaccinated in Bauchi, for instance?
Thank you very much. Since the outbreak of yellow fever last year in one of the local government, of Algaleri local government, and we knew that Algaleri is a tourist center where we have a lot of primates, monkeys, antelopes, and bats. These are the reservoir of the infection. We also have another reservoir, game reserve in Ningi local government, where also the transmission continues because we have a lot of cases also there. Last year we have 77 cases in Al-Ghadiri and others, and the other local government we're talking about. Now, this is a very difficult organism. It can only be transmitted by the bite of infected mosquito to another person. So if 20 people are in this room, and if there's no mosquito, there's no way the transmission of yellow fever can continue. Now the federal government and the partners, and WHO and other partners, started vaccination over 10 years ago. Now, I told you that we missed the vaccination in many communities because mothers and fathers forgot about the last part of the vaccination at 9 months. And if it is only 10 years ago, that means those that are 12, 13, 14, they are not getting the vaccination. Only 10 years ago that people were vaccinated. Now, the amount of immunity that will be given to the community is still not there. That is why the federal government has designed what we call preventive vaccination for Nigerians. And the Bauchi state is starting in February. We have started planning already the preventive vaccination, to all the 19 local government, apart from the Al-Ghadiri local government, in which we vaccinated everybody, but up to 1 to 44 years. And even others are coming for vaccination. Now, for example, this outbreak is a big concern to us because the NYSC camp is within the Ganjua local government. There are 700 youth corpers that came into that local government. And immediately they came in, we actually activate our response team. They are there. The surveillance team are there. They took sample of the corpers, particularly for the COVID-19. 8 were positive and were isolated in the holding room. Now, this outbreak, since they are in the same Ganjua local government, we have to vaccinate all the core members in the camp. Not all the core members, there are staff that are the NYC directors and his staff, and the people who are selling food around there. So yesterday and the day before yesterday, we vaccinated 800 core members. These core members are coming to the larger society to carry out primary assignments, so we need to protect them. And then what we also realized, those that are positive, there are 8 of them in Ganjua local government, and we have to get to manage them in our primary health care centers, and their referral linkages to the general hospital and teaching hospital around. So we identify those linkages. All those that are positive, we give them treated mosquito net. Since it is only after the biting of the mosquito from that infected person that can transmit to others. So we distribute treated insecticide treated net to those infected. There are about 8 of them. The day before yesterday, again, we found out that we have another 2 deaths suspected from the yellow fever. 60 sample was sent to our to reference laboratory. Up to almost 12 days today, we have not received the result. It is a big problem. Now, on the other side of the infection is the Lassa Fever. We still have another 3 new confirmed cases and deaths from the Lassa Fever. We sent about 60 samples again. Up to today, we only received this report of yesterday of 3 samples, 2 positive, 1 death. And it is really our concern. Now, we need to inform the public about yellow fever. It is, the bite is not mostly it's not at the night because the virus, the mosquitoes usually carry out activity in the afternoon. I don't think, maybe they don't see in the night. They will check if there's good light. Now, when farmers went to the farm, they were getting infected from the virus. And that is the most important aspect. Those people that went into the bush, maybe to get firewood, they can get infection from the sylvatic type as mentioned or the jungle type. And the transmission is that when the mosquitoes, there are another mosquito also in the town. Also Aedes mosquito in the town that will now transmit the person when you come back to bite you and bite another person. So we need to know what type of mosquito we are dealing with. That is why in the rules and regulation of yellow fever, you must engage a parasitologist to catch these mosquitoes, to get larvae, and then give you the report before we send to RCG through National Primary Care and get enough vaccine for vaccination. Now, we don't have enough vaccine to carry out vaccination for the whole local government. Even the ward, we are only vaccinated 800. The reserve and the buffer that we have. We send another 900. The vaccination is going on in the whole local government, but may not complete because many men and women who are more than 44 years, they are coming out to collect vaccination because they are afraid. Now, this thing can infect them. So, I think the federal government and the National Primary Care and the NCD should help us to control this disease by giving us the result of our treatment so that we'll be able to carry out active case search and further treatment of these confirmed cases.
All right. Thank you very much, Doctor. Dr. Rewan, we'll return to you. I just want to bring in again Dr. Ronke Akonde. Dr. Ronke Akonde, we're talking about vaccination, and so on and so forth. There are some side issues we'll chat about presently. How many vaccinations should an individual have in a lifetime? Dr. Bassi was saying, vaccination can protect you for an entire life. And a moment ago, Dr. Riwan Mohammed was saying, they went to the NYSC camp where you have some 700 or 800 youth corps members who are having their orientation. And because of the outbreak of the yellow fever, they have had to vaccinate all of them. If amongst those youth corps members, one of them got vaccinated at the age of 9 months, do you need a double shot? Just tell us about how many times an individual can present him or herself for vaccination against yellow fever.
Okay, thank you very much. Like we've been saying, the process of vaccination is still the most important method of preventing yellow fever, in the sense that the vaccine has to be safe and effective. What do I mean by this? If the vaccine is not effective, it won't be able to prevent the virus. So the vaccine can be given through several strategies that are designed, and that's what we've been doing in Nigeria. We have routine infant immunization activities, which are usually ongoing every day or weekly in our primary health care centers across the nation. We have what we call mass vaccination with yellow fever vaccines, particularly during epidemic like this. And the third one is the vaccination of travelers to yellow fever endemic areas. Let me emphasize that a single dose of yellow fever vaccine is very, very effective to produce a sustained immunity over a lifelong period. So what does this mean? This means if you take a shot of yellow fever vaccine today, so it can last you for years, for ages, as long as you live. So you don't need any booster dose. You don't need any second dose or third dose. But what we discovered is that people's attitude to vaccination, some are uncooperative. They will get at infancy, that's the one we give at 9 months. They will still come to get whenever we are doing community mass vaccination campaigns. So these are the issues with the vaccination, but people need to be rest assured that once you get it once, you are covered.
Is there any risk in the double shot or triple shot?
Actually, there are no risks, but there are associated adverse events associated with taking yellow fever vaccines. And these are quite common in age group about 60 years of age. Like you have asked earlier on, why are vaccination not given to someone who is about the age of 44? This is another factor that determines who you give to, because they tend to react adversely in an unusual manner. Mm-hmm. It's not as if the vaccine is toxic or it's a kind of immune reaction from different individual, which might be different across board. So it depends on you, but usually people above the age of 60, they are at higher risk of developing this adverse reaction to the vaccine.
I'd like you to clarify something. Earlier on, you used an adjective to qualify vaccine. You said it must be effective. Does it mean that among those who have taken vaccine doses, there could be some that have not been effective? And so we do have, those ones also come down with yellow fever. And then what has happened, apart from COVID-19, in the past, we know, we hear of, vaccination against measles. It was a regular thing, in those, we never, the yellow fever vaccination was not so, common, so what happened?
Thank you very much. Yellow fever vaccines, usually we recommend that when you give it, there is a specific, it's age range in which it can be given. So that means at the age of 9 months, a child should have a shot. And people who are above the age of 9 months to 44 years, they are entitled to it. The effectiveness of vaccines depends on the properties of a vaccine and how vaccines are being kept or being stored in our cold stores and the handling of the vaccines. You know, majority of our vaccines, they don't like heat. When the heats are too much, they tend to lose their potency. So that is why we maintain what we call cold chain for this vaccine. And this requires a lot of resources. You can't just get a vaccine and keep on a table. It's the nature of the vaccine, it destroys it. It makes it ineffective. So those are the things you factor in when you are giving vaccination. Most of the time, what we give, they are potent vaccines. However, during the course of handling, during the course of vaccination process or routine clinic, there could be an error somewhere. So this error tends to affect vaccine potencies, which makes it the ingredients in the vaccine to be denatured, and it makes it loses its own effectiveness. So someone who got that kind of vaccine is as good as if he got nothing.
Having a placebo.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ronke Akonde, Dr. Basi Okposen, and Dr. Jeffy. I would also like you to respond to this. But first, Dr. Basi, because yellow fever is a vaccine-preventable disease. In other words, if you have a shot, all these stories that we are talking about, Aedes aegypti mosquito, even if they bite you 100 times, and since they fly in the afternoon, almost like a witch who flies in the afternoon, then you are covered. But here we are. For those who travel, and you did say earlier, Dr. Basi, that they are one of the categories of persons or one of the platforms for getting the vaccine. I don't know that, I think I've had some 2 or 3 or so yellow fever, so these yellow cards, where you have your vaccination recorded X, Y, Z, and I've taken quite some shots. Those cards, they will say it would last you for 10 years. But how come I'm hearing now that it will last for a lifetime? Dr. Akonde has said it. You had also said that earlier. So why is it? What is the issue here? What is the potency, what the duration of a vaccine, and why is that that requirement for you carrying the yellow card? Even though in most countries that you visit, nobody will ask you for a yellow card, but I think in South Africa they do. So just explain that.
Okay. Yellow fever vaccines, when given, for most, up to 90%, it will give lifelong immunity. But there are some countries that will require that even if you have shown evidence of vaccination, after 10 years, there should be a booster. So it's country-specific now. If I've taken vaccination and I'm sure I took the shot, I shouldn't be bothered or worried whether I'm protected or not. Now, if I have taken, by tomorrow there's a campaign going on, I don't need to worry to take if the period I took is less than 10 years. Before you can think of a booster under normal circumstances, it should be 10 years and above. And also to use this opportunity to inform Nigerians that the vaccines we use in Nigeria are very safe. In Africa, Nigeria is the only country that pays for yellow fever vaccine for the kids at 9 months, 100%. It's the only country, because we realize the fact that we need to protect our children. And that's where we have to commend His Excellency, the President, the Minister, and the Executive Director, Dr. Faisal, because they ensure that these vaccines are available for routine immunization. Now, and you see the cases we are seeing here also there now, are not involving children, except for any reason like Dr. Riwaya have said in Bauchi, the father or mother didn't take the child for vaccination. Then those are the kind of ones that might come down with it in future because they are not protected. And about the safety, the government goes extra mile to put labels on all the vaccines to guide our health workers at the point of vaccination, whether this vaccine is good or not. Okay, that's what we call the VVM. It's on the body of every vaccine. Once the health worker picks it, if it's still good, the label will show it is good. It gives. If for anything has happened to it, the VVM will change. The health worker cannot use that vaccine.
Let's put you on hold, Dr. Basi. Thank you for those explanations. Gentlemen and lady, we'll just go on a short break, and then when we come back, we'll continue with our conversation. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're looking at yellow fever. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. It's Say Good Morning Nigeria on the network service. And just before we went on that break, I had put Dr. Bassi on hold. Dr. Bassi, I will now throw this question open. It's a public health issue. So I'd just like to take this again, quote from William Crawford Gorgas. And research says that this is the man who was able to eliminate yellow fever in Havana, that's in Cuba, and in Panama in 1902 and 1906. And he says that, one, this species of mosquito, that's the Aedes aegypti, does not fly too high because it can easily be blown away and destroyed. And then lastly, it seldom wanders from the house in which it was bred. So how come it is so destructive, it is so dangerous? If it was bred here, it cannot fly higher, it bites only in the daytime, and it cannot move from here. So why is it so dangerous?
Okay. I will attempt to answer that, and then I'll link with the first question he had asked earlier.
Yeah.
It's like we have an aeroplane. Aeroplane will always go on. The air will fly, get to where it's going to go into. You have a Jeep that has a four-wheel runner. When he gets to where they stand, he will activate the gear and move on. It's used to that environment. The Aedes aegypti, characteristically is found in tropical and subtropical, tropical Africa and subtropical America. And like you've said, you see, they like residing exactly where they are. They don't go out. That is one. Two, in those areas we are seeing them that are causing the problem within the country, those same states, almost always when there's an outbreak, it's around those same area that is occurring. Like in Enugu, when it started, it's still around those LGS. In Kogi, when we had some outbreak, it's around those LGS. Delta now is around those LGS. He had asked earlier, why is it that the mosquito will bite this person, and yet this one is this and this one? The Aedes aegypti, the way it is made and was created, carries the yellow fever virus. If you bite somebody with that virus inside his blood, he will pick that virus. That virus lives in it. It can transfer to another person. If this same Aedes aegypti bites somebody with the protozoa that causes malaria, even if it sucks the blood and pick it, it will not work in the system for it to be able to transfer. It must be the Anopheles mosquito that transfer the malaria parasite, that if it picks, will transfer the malaria parasite. If the Anopheles bites somebody that has the virus that causes yellow fever in his blood and picks it, it's not going to process in the system and be able to transfer. So the Anopheles will transfer the protozoa that causes malaria and not the virus. The Aedes aegypti will only transfer the virus that causes yellow fever. It will not transfer the one that causes malaria. So you find out that, like you've rightly said, it moves around the same area. And that is why we advise people, prevention is better than cure. We prevent with vaccination. For those people that live around those forests that goes into the bush, we advise them to wear long clothings that covers their hands, trousers, with boots. The mosquito will only bite the clothes without touching them. We also advise them to use repellents. There are some repellents that if they rub on their body, the mosquito comes near, it will fly off on its own.
Yeah,
typically.
Dr. Bassi, you just made a point that is also very curious, and that's where Dr. Abubakar is being invited again to speak. I mean, this is an obiter. Namely, it's curious to me, and perhaps to some other persons, that fine, you are asked to protect your skin by wearing clothes, long stuff, and then earlier we were being told that the simians, that's to say monkeys or apes, may very well be the carrier of of the yellow fever virus itself, which the mosquito now bites. But if you look at the skin of those simians, they are furry. So before the mosquito will now penetrate, there must be something it must be looking for. Because the proboscis, that's the beak, if you like, the beak with which it sucks, it's not a particularly strong item. But again, that's nature, and I'm sure we'll have some other time to discuss all of that. But if you want to speak to that, Dr. Jeffia, that's fine. But otherwise, the key question I want to ask you is as follows. Considering the symptoms that have been identified with yellow fever, is yellow fever treatable? If it is treatable, is it curable?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I will say that yes, yellow fever is treatable. There is no specific treatment for yellow fever. However, supportive therapy is being given, and as you present with symptoms, that is how you are being, treated. Now, the other question you asked about the proboscis of the mosquito. Now, there are surfaces even within the monkey whereby the mosquito can be able to suck blood and transmit yellow fever. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. I think we have a number of tweets that have come in already. Dr. Akonde, you are yearning to say something?
Yeah, actually, this particular vector called Aedes aegypti, we understand the properties well. There's what we call vector surveillance. So this has been able to help us to study the nature of the mosquito. So when you discover that these mosquitoes can also migrate from even after biting a monkey in the bush and bite a passerby, and the passerby enters into a population with low or no immunity, the mosquito within the environment still continue to bite people in the day. You know, when it bites in the day, you hardly notice that you are being bitten by mosquito. That's one of the hardest part of it. Unlike Anopheles mosquito that, okay, in the night they are coming, you can get ready for them, you can get prepared. So even during your daily activities, you are being beaten and you don't know, you are not aware. So those are the issues around the nature of this mosquito, and that makes it difficult to control.
Sometimes when you see some kinds of mosquitoes, you are wondering where these ones are.
Big.
So big and dark, and then we see their legs like this. You know that these are invaders in your environment. Dr. Bassi. All right, Claire. We have some tweets. Let's take Mike Anyakwo. Says yellow fever is a killer disease, and all efforts must be made to eliminate it in our country. This task must be done by all stakeholders. A healthy nation is a wealthy nation. Okay,
Leo Fadeka, yellow fever. Well, he goes on to tell us what yellow fever is, but he says its resurgence is caused by attitudinal neglect and focus on Lassa and other viral infections by the health sector. It has effective vaccine.
All right, Usman Banu Kantu tweets, over the decade we've been passing from one health crisis to another. While we urge governments at all levels to do the needful, we pray to God to give us succor and have mercy on us. We plead that Nigerians be educated of the precautionary measures to be taken. Here, precautionary measure, most effective, vaccination. That's what the experts have been saying.
And this is an interesting one from Badamasi Haruna Adam. He says, it's like listening, it can be contained by engaging all stakeholders again. The traditional rulers, religious leaders, community associations, and PAC workers. Now, some of the causes of the resurgence, I think, is the inability of the government to focus on the general health in the country. So, traditional rulers and...
that's right. Traditional rulers are very important. Yes. There's no question about that. What we were discussing earlier had to do with the constitutional role that has been asked for. Jibril Naina, containment of yellow fever can be achieved by proper and daily sanitation of our immediate environment to forestall breeding grounds for mosquitoes. At this juncture, I'm calling on governments at all levels to reinvigorate environmental inspection officers in collaboration with health workers, so they will be checking and enforcing compulsory sanitation for the betterment of our nation's health security.
Mutana Farouk, prevention is better than cure and sometimes cheaper. All the possible causes of yellow fever should be prevented. The culture of practicing personal hygiene, sanitation could be of great help in preventing all kinds of diseases and ailments.
Yellow fever should have been a thing of the past if we've been more keen in curtailing its spread. Now, diseases become more resistant and prevalent when the right things are not done at the right time.
And this is from Law Alpha C. He says, he used to have yellow fever and typhoid, and I'm going to read how he treated, that looked like death knocking on his door until someone advised him to desist from drinking all sachet water. Being hawked around, rather boil water, allow it to cool, and drink from there.
Well, I'm not a health expert. For typhoid, yes, that might work. But for yellow fever, from what we had this morning, that's unlikely to work, right? It's not, yellow fever is not a waterborne disease. But typhoid fever is a waterborne disease. Is that correct? I'm asking the experts now. All right, so they're all saying yes, yes, yes. So, Claire, Comrade Ngala says government should try and embark on weekly sanitation nationwide. During the 80s and 90s, immunization against the 6 killer diseases for both adults and children was there, but this time not in existence. That is not correct. Again, if you listen to what the experts have been saying, routine vaccination is ongoing for the 6 childhood killer diseases that we used to know, and the fatalities arising from those diseases have climbed down. Just get to know that you have to be vaccinated at a certain age when you are born, and even at adult life. Once the campaign is on and you think you have not had it, go for a shot.
Okay, OCG says it's Macbeth, that novel by William Shakespeare that said, the snake has only been scotched but not killed. This is case of yellow fever in Anambra and perhaps in many other states. He said the transmission line has to be hunted, e.g. vaccinate the animals, and so on and so forth. Thank you all for your tweets. And you know, we've said that this is a vaccine preventable disease. So to prevent it, of course, you get vaccinated. But are there no other ways of depopulating the vector? And earlier on in our conversation, Kingsley and I talked about, you know, I shared, you know, research findings that talked about disrupting the mating, you know, using music and some form of, I don't know. Okay, that I can do.
Yeah, actually, sanitation could help in the environmental control aspect of the vector control. We encourage people to clear bushes around them, gutter, stagnant water. Sometimes they can use chemicals called larvicides. They can put it in those stagnant waters or water sources that could serve as potential breeding space for this particular mosquito.
Same way you treat Anopheles mosquitoes.
Exactly. Okay. So, and apart from this, screening of the whole house, the openings in the windows, the doors, they can be screened with nets. So this, in a way, could prevent the entry of this Aedes aegypti. Another thing that people can do is to use mosquito repellents during the day, apart from the protective covering that we are being advised to put on, particularly if you need to go to the bush, or if you're a farmer or a fisherman or you work in the bush, you need to cover yourself up and ask for creams that you can rub on your skin that can repel this mosquito. So environmental control in form of sanitation could actually help.
What has a fisherman got to do with the cream? I mean, there's water that is getting into it and putting the cream on his body. How? I'm just...
you know, in the forest, when you go fishing...
I'm saying on water, not on the forest. Fisherman. Yes, a fisherman. Okay. That's a joke. But we understand the point that you are making. I mean, you need to protect yourself before you get into an environment where you might have some infection. Dr. Rewan Mohammed, once again from Bauchi Network Center. Earlier, you seem to have been complaining about inadequate personnel to help escalate the vaccination drive that you are having at this time. Why would you have a shortage of personnel for your public health outreach, particularly for vaccination, and you're therefore now calling on the federal government and the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency?
Maybe you didn't hear very well. I said that we sent sample for investigation in the National Reference Laboratory, and about 60 for Lassa Fever, 63 for yellow fever. Up to today, we have not received results. Over 12 days. It's not easy to contain the virus. Now, it is the reason why we are out. In reality, one thing that people didn't know is that yellow fever vaccine itself takes 3 to 4 years for the production. That is the reason why it's not enough, and it's restricted to about 9 months only we are giving to the children. Anybody can be vaccinated to increase the immunity. But unfortunately, for us here in Bauchi, we need, and we are doing already, training of our all healthcare workers on standard operating procedures. We are also trying to engage, synthesize the community on radio programs about what is yellow fever, how is signs and symptoms, how they can protect themselves. Now, one thing that I know is that is very important is that we need to carry out fumigation of the environment. And that's what we did last year. His Excellency, the Executive Governor, spent a lot of money in areas.
Oh, we're sorry about that. We hope we will get back to you for your last word. But let's come back to the studio. Dr. Jafia, I'd like you to give, the doctor, Dr. Mohammed Mbauchi, kept saying, for 12 days they've not received a response from you, results of the samples that they have sent to you. And he's concerned. You could see the expression on his face. Is that of concern? He's really worried about that. So what could be the problem?
Yeah, so, at this time we have outbreaks from, several states, and we've been collecting samples from several states. What we do advise the states is that if already an LGA has a confirmed yellow fever case, we will not burden our system to be testing for, samples within that population. But if it's a new LGA, no problem, we'll go ahead and test using the, PCR system. But these samples that they have sent, because already the LGA has an outbreak, so these samples that they have sent are being processed through the normal serology. That's one. The second thing is that we've had a discussion with the state epidemiologists. Most of these case investigation forms that they sent to the National Reference Laboratory are having some information that are missing. So we needed them to ensure that those information are there before, some of these samples can be processed. So this is exactly what is happening. The other thing I want to quickly mention is that the fact that we are seeing yellow fever coming, on board severally now is because our surveillance system is up and doing. We've been having this outbreak before, even before, between 1986 to 2017, there were no yellow fever outbreaks. So we were thinking that there's no yellow fever. However, it came, and we started having outbreaks from 2017 till now. And we found out that there has been a circulating genomic sequencing has shown that this same virus has been circulating for a long period of time. So what I'm saying is that the reason why we see this current outbreak is because our surveillance system are sensitive. We're able to pick up, cases, and we're able to investigate and see exactly.
This is the same cycle that emanates from the forest, isn't it? Is there anything that we can do? Because it would appear that if we attack the breeds from the forest, we probably would have will make progress. I don't know.
Yeah, so this is the problem. The reservoirs that live within the jungles, they are silent in these reservoirs. They don't cause that problem in the reservoirs. For some reason, during the season when human beings approach those our forest areas, they get infected and they bring in the infection to the communities where people live. So that is exactly what is happening.
And it's possible also, Dr. Jafia, from what you have said, that at some point we might overcome the usual initial reaction when you have multiple apparently unexplained deaths. What we hear is that strange disease. And sometimes one will say to himself, is there any disease that is strange again, considering the level of research and amount of information available out there in the world? Dr. Bassi.
Okay.
Briefly, please.
Briefly, I think what I just want to say is that we have plans as an agency under the leadership of the Chief Executive to immunize Nigerians. We receive vaccines from the global community, the ICG. The plan was to immunize all adults in Nigeria, but globally these vaccines are not available. It's the pressure the Executive Director had placed on the international community that the ones we have to vaccinate our adults in those 7-8 years were released. And what we will tell Nigerians is we can protect ourselves, our families, by ensuring that when these campaigns are being conducted, we come out to receive these vaccines. And then area sprays of those forests, those areas, identified areas, will also be useful. Here, the state governments can embark on area sprays of those areas. Once they reduce the population of the mosquito, they are also indirectly reducing the transmission rate. And also, Nigerians, to ensure that they keep the environment clean, depopulate, make sure that there are no pools of water, no unnecessary shrubs that are there, use repellent when the need arises, and this will really help. The government is still out there to ensure that Nigerians are protected. And the other last group I want to talk about is that for at least our children that are 9 months, the vaccines are out there free of charge at the health facilities.
And for those who are above 9 months, or say adults, cost on the vaccine?
It's free of charge.
All right. So, thank you very much, Dr. Basi Okbosen, Director of Disease Control and Immunization at the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. We appreciate you being part of our discussion.
Thank you.
We also would like to thank Dr. Ronke Akonde, who is head of Communicable Diseases, FCT Primary Healthcare Board. Dr. Akonde, thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you.
Dr. Abubakar Jefia, who is Incident Manager of the National Yellow Fever Emergency Operations. We appreciate your being with us this morning. Dr. Riwan Mohammed, Chairman of the Bauchi State Primary Healthcare Development Agency. We thank you for your contributions to our discussion this morning, and best of luck in dealing with this yellow fever outbreak in your state. So that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend and join us again on Monday, 7 o'clock in the morning. Stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Usadolo.
I am Claire Delabu Abdul Razak. Don't forget to join in the campaign against rape and rapists. Stand with us, NTA. Bye-bye.